Good morning. Now we're ready to get started. And we're going to start with the national anthem by Melissa Cherie.
If everyone would please stand with me. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Melissa Cherie. Your mother must be very proud. Welcome, and thank you everyone for coming to the 2015 Report on the Status of Women. We are very proud and excited to bring this information to you today. Before we get started, I'm just going to ask that everybody just kind of look to your left, to the person to your left, and say good morning. And then look to your right, and then look to the right, and say a very good morning. Just thought I'd break the ice a little bit. I know we've all had a lot of conversation this morning. We are going to introduce our mayor, so many of us know and warmly greet our mayor, Mayor Bill Bogart, to the stage. He's going to give us greetings.
Thank you very much, Jar. I'm delighted to be here this morning to join with the Commission on the Status of Women in extending a welcome to you all. This is obviously an important gathering this morning. It's an important event, and it's recognized as such by all of you who are filling this auditorium almost to capacity. My colleagues from the council, several of them are here this morning. The Vice Mayor, Jackie Robinson. Council Member Jean Masuda. Council Member Margaret McAustin. Unless I lose a vote on the next meeting night, is there any other council member? The city manager is here, reflecting the importance of the highest levels of this report. Needless to say, when the Commission on the Status of Women issues a research-based and significant report on the status of women, it's doing exactly what it was established to do. The Commission has one of the broadest range of activities and programs of any of our commissions. And I'm grateful, and I know all of you are grateful for what is being done. But this report puts information on the line and helps us to make some commitments based on the information that we have about the status of women in this community to do better in the future, to improve the status of women and make them the status more equal to the rest of the population than it has been in the fore. The statistics show that women are not recognized in this community and in this society as equal in many respects, as will be discovered. You know, this report has 4 or 5 important elements that will be detailed shortly: employment and earnings, housing and homelessness, the status of women veterans, domestic violence, and then human trafficking. I know we're all anxious to hear that. Let me simply take this opportunity to mark the importance of the event by presenting to the chair of the commission a certificate of recognition to the Commission on the Status of Women upon the successful production of the 2015 report on the status of women in Pasadena, and for making a difference in the lives of women and girls in our community. The Commission makes Pasadena proud. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and we received that and honored to have that certificate as well. There are a few other elected officials that we want to make sure that we recognize in the room as well. From U.S. Senator Barbara Boxer's office, we have Patricia Zarette. We have from Congresswoman Judy Chu's office, we have Lindsay Plake and Viola Van. From Senator Carol Liu's office, we have Talan Mileggio and Megan Rodriguez. From Assembly Member Holden's office, we have Kayleen Maya and we have Darla Dyson. And I believe you mentioned Councilman Victor Gordo's office. Vanna is here today. And from Councilman Steve Madison's office, we have Taka Suzuki. From Councilman Terry Tornick's office, we have Pam Tourette. From Pasadena City College, we have the trustee, Jeanette Mann, and the trustee, Linda Waugh. And I believe that you may have mentioned it, but I will mention it again because I'm so proud that you're here. We have Chief Sanchez here. Can you give us a big wave and a warm welcome? We have the Director of Human Services and Recreation, and we thank them so much for supporting this event with Roseanne and her staff. Mercy Santoro, please wave your hand, and thank you, Roseanne and Mercy, so much. Council Member Jean Masuda, we mentioned you before. I'll mention you again because you're District 4, and that's me. An extra little shout out. Take a breath, and we'll just really recognize any other people in the room that have stepped in that are elected officials from other offices. Thank you. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to recognize our commissioners that's been on this commission and who's done an amazing job at putting this event that you see together. So Commissioner Wolf, wave your hand. Commissioner Albert, wave your hand. Commissioner Farr, Commissioner Zavala, Commissioner Cornell, Commissioner Hernandez, and Commissioner Holliday. These are your Pasadena Commission on the Status of Women. We're going to begin with the report. And we're very excited to bring this information, as the mayor mentioned, because we've been working on this report for most of last year into this year to bring you the data you're going to receive today. We have Eleanor Siebert, who's from Mount St. Mary's University here, to present the report to us. Eleanor is a retired academic vice president for Mount St. Mary's College in Los Angeles. As a professor at Mount St. Mary's, she has coordinated the development of university's 2014 and 2015 reports of the status of women and girls in California, and prepared reports on the status of women for the city of Pasadena and Los Angeles. Dr. Siebert was a member of the Mount St. Mary's faculty for nearly 40 years. She is published author and serves on several associations. Dr. Siebert was a senior commissioner for the Western Association of Schools and Colleges and currently represents the Senior Commission on the Association of Community Colleges and Junior Colleges. She began her career as a chemist in industry and has authored numerous research articles in the field of chemistry. Let's do a warm welcome for Eleanor as she comes to the stage.
Well, good morning. And I want to thank the organizers for having us join you today for this special event. Mount St. Mary's University in Los Angeles is really proud to partner with commissions like the Pasadena Commission on the Status of Women to present the report. Research on women is woefully lacking, and that's at all levels. It's at the national, state, and city level. And our goal at Mount St. Mary's is to change that. For the past 3 years, Mount St. Mary's has produced an annual report on the status of women and girls in the state, and I'll share a little more about that with you at the end of the talk. We work with commissions like Pasadena, the City of Los Angeles, and other foundations and organizations to provide research on women and girls. And our hope is that this report and others will spark conversations like you're having today and beyond, and inspire action in your community. So now, I need to get into the technical mode. We were directed to 5 areas of exploration by your commission. The first was employment and earnings. The second was housing and homelessness. Third, women veterans. Fourth, domestic violence, human trafficking, as the final section. What we will do today is to present a very few highlights of the report. You'll receive a copy of the report at the end of the session this morning, and you'll find that the report itself presents a heck of a lot of data, but all of these data are really just a snapshot of what was available between May and October of 2014 when we were looking for the data. Well, Pasadena has a total population, I speak in round numbers, of 140,000, half of whom are women, females rather. Over 22,000 women are employed, and Pasadena's workforce is comprised of 44% women. Women have the majority of the workforce in 4 broad occupational categories. These are personal care and service occupations, where women comprise 72% of the workforce, office and administrative support, where women are 71% of the workforce, healthcare practitioner and medical technology occupations, 62% of the workforce, and healthcare support occupations, where women are 87% of the workforce. Again, this is in the report, and you will get a copy. In general, women earn less than men in Pasadena, as they do in the county, the state, and indeed the nation. If we limit ourselves to looking at full-time workers who work 12 months a year, year-round, in 2012, the median salary of Pasadena women was $54,000, and that of men was $59,000. The ratio of women's earnings to men's earnings gives a gender wage gap that we refer to. And in Pasadena, that is on the order of 0.91, which means that women earn 91 cents for every dollar that men earn. Actually, that's pretty darn good. In California, the ratio is 0.84, and in the United States, the gap is 0.79, meaning women earn 79 cents on average for every dollar earned by men. In Pasadena, you actually have 4 occupational clusters where women earn as much as and even slightly more than men, and I thought this should be a positive note for you. So I've put them here on the board. The healthcare practitioner and medical technology occupations, the median salary for women is $98,000, and women earn $1.10 for men who work in that occupational cluster. Office and administrative support occupations, the median salary for women is $41,000. Again, women out-earn men in this particular set of occupations, earning $1.10 for every dollar earned by men. Then there's a very broad occupational category, including education, legal occupations, community service, arts, and media. The median salary there is $71,000 for women, and that's close to parity. Women earn $1.05 for every dollar earned by men. The greatest gap where women earn more is in sales and related services. The median salary is $54,000, and women earn $1.28 for every dollar earned by men. Wish that all occupations showed these kinds of trends. These are 4 out of many occupational clusters. Turning now to housing and homelessness, Pasadena has about 60,000 housing units, and 60% are renter occupied. Over half of those who pay rent spend more than 30% of their income on rent. Unfortunately, this is typical in California. Statewide, 55% of renters pay more than 30% of their income on rent, and in LA County, 57% pay more than 30%. Now, nationwide, it's not quite that story. Slightly less than half of renters, 48%, pay 30% or more of their income on rent. In terms of housing, 30% of the housing units are headed by women. 11% are single mothers, and 19% are women living alone. It's worth noting, I think, that of the single mothers, 42% of those have children under the age of 18 years. And of the women who live alone, 38% are over the age of 65. At the last homeless count, the last homeless count when we were writing this, that would have been in 2014, there were around 650 homeless people counted in Pasadena. That's roughly 0.5% of your population. But importantly, nearly 80 of these homeless people are children under the age of 18 years. Looking only at the homeless adults, this includes roughly 200 women. Now, the women are the red bars, and the bar on the far left is the homeless who happen to be sheltered. The bar in the middle are the unsheltered. These are people who are living in cars, on the street, and other places that are not really considered habitable. And then the final bar is the total. At any rate, you can see that 2/3 of the homeless women are in shelters. 1/3 is living on the streets. Pasadena has about 5,000 veterans, and these include fewer than 400 women. As a group, it's interesting to note that the women veterans are younger than the men vets, with 20% of the women under the age of 35 years, and that's compared to 6% of the men who are under 35 years. When you look at the demographic of women veterans, it's interesting. You see that veterans tend to be more predominantly African American. In Pasadena, 30% of women veterans are African American, and that's compared to 10% of the non-veteran women in Pasadena. The other slice of the pie that's very different is Asians. Among the Pasadena's women's veterans, 6% are Asian. That's 17% of the non-veteran women are Asian. Veterans represent about 12% of Pasadena's adult homeless population. That's about 50 veterans. We're down to pretty small numbers. And 6 of them at the last count were homeless women veterans. Happily, only one of those was unsheltered, but it is a veteran. Turning to domestic violence, the Pasadena Police Department receives over 700 calls for assistance in domestic violence situations each year. Now, this number has been trending downward since 2010, but it's still a lot. Of the documented domestic violence victims, 84% are female, and the median age is 32 years. Latinas and African Americans are disproportionately represented among the domestic violence victims. For example, Latinos represent 45% of the domestic violence victims, but 29% of the general population. African Americans represent 26% of DV victims, 10% of the general population. Finally, in this report, we looked at human trafficking. Human trafficking is the business of forcing or transporting a person or persons for exploitation. Generally, that exploitation is for labor and/or sex purposes. This is a global problem. Globally, it's estimated that there are 21 million victims worldwide. 78%, that's over 3/4, are trafficked for labor, and 22% for sexual exploitation. Virtually all of the sex victims, 98%, are female, and over half, 55%, of those exploited for labor are female. Because California has a major international boundary, a high immigrant population, and a large economy, it is one of the nation's top destinations for trafficked persons. In California, 47% of documented victims are exploited for sex and 49% for labor. Now, globally, the estimates were, remember, 22% for sex and 78% for labor. So we have a different market here, so to speak. Among those in California exploited for labor, 1/3 are trafficked for domestic servitude and 10% for agriculture. Interestingly, when we look at the victims who are seeking assistance, the percentage of sex victims seeking assistance is 56% are female. 23% of labor trafficked humans are female. Between 2010 and 2012, 1,300 trafficking victims in LA County were identified by the Regional Task Force on Human Trafficking. Of the clients they were able to serve, about half were from Asian countries and just over 1/3 from Central America. Well, that is the whirlwind tour of the report. We invite you to learn more learn more about the status of women. It will, as I understand it, be online this afternoon, just afternoon. And you can find there the entire report at your leisure. In addition, I did want to, of course, endorse the report that Mount St. Mary's will be releasing on March the 19th. This is the 2015 report on the status of women and girls in the state of California. It's a public, free event at the Skirball Cultural Center in Los Angeles, and we hope that you'll go to our website, www.msmu.edu, to learn more about both the event and the report. I want to thank you for your attention this morning, and thank you for caring.
Just takes a minute to negotiate that beautiful bouquet of flowers there. I would like for Mount St. Mary's to stand, please. And Eleanor, thank you once again. That was an amazing report with exceptional data. We have here with us, we also have Kimberly Kenny, who's from Mount St. Mary's, who put a lot of time into that report with the committee, and also Suzanne Williams, who is the Dean on Weekends Studies. So thank you very much for that. We're going to continue on here, and I'm going to introduce the panel moderator, which is Pasadena's own Lena Kennedy. And of course, Lena is the Chief Executive Officer and President of LL Kennedy and Associates. And we know that she has over 30 years of professional experience as an accomplished strategic political consultant, community organizer, spiritual advisor, philanthropic consultant, coalition builder, and corporate advisor to national high-profile political, civic, and corporate clients. We're really excited because Lena was part of the development and implementation of campaign community outreach initiatives and fundraising for the election of United States of America President Barack Obama in 2008 and in 2012. Let's welcome to the stage Lena Kennedy.
Thank you, Char. So my job, good morning, everyone. Good morning. So my job is to moderate the panel, and what I've decided to do, panelists, I'm going to call your names up as I introduce you. You walk on the stage. Will that work for all of you? Okay, and then once all of them get on the stage, we will get into our questions. And so the way that our questions will work, I have 5 questions for each panelist. And I'm going to watch my time. I took Carolyn's watch. So I'm going to watch the time to make sure that we honor everyone here and the time frame that's been allotted for the whole morning. So let's get started. So as they talked about the different topics that we're going to talk about, the first is employment and earnings. And we have Kelly Jenkins Pewitz, who is the Regional Administrator of Women's Bureau Regional 9 for the United States Department of Labor. Kelly oversees efforts to create and deliver educational outreach activities in the state of Arizona, California, Hawaii, and Nevada. The Women's Bureau mission is to advance women's wages, job opportunities, and benefits, and provide technical assistance to educators, business, and community leaders about policies and programs to enhance women's economic status. Next, we have homeless and housing. We have Cynthia Foster. Cynthia Foster is the Chief Operating Officer for Union Station Homeless Services. Cynthia provides comprehensive community-based solutions to the complex and growing problem of homelessness. Cynthia joined Union Station Homeless Services in 1997 and continues to be committed to assisting the underserved in our community to realize their dreams of affordable housing. She is a Pasadena native and has more than 25 years experience. Our third person, Women Veterans, and we have Lindsay Sen. And she is the Deputy Secretary of Women's Veteran Affairs and works for California Vets. Lindsay was appointed to the position by Governor Brown on November the 22nd, 2011. After graduating from high school in her hometown of Sacramento, Lindsay enlisted in the United States Navy and served from 1997 until 2005 as a linguistic technician interpretive in the Arabic language. She completed 2 flights in tours in Spain, during which time she developed in support of Operations Northern Watch, Southern Watch, Enduring Freedom, and Iraq Freedom, and achieved the rank of Petty Officer First Class. Thank you. I'm always impressed with people, with women that have served our country, and I just personally thank you. Next, we have Patty Giggins, who will focus on domestic violence. Patty is Executive Director, and her agency is Peace Over Violence. Peace Over Violence is a sexual and domestic violence for youth and preventative services. Patty has held numerous statewide and national leadership positions, including Board Vice President of, is that 1 in 6, Patty?
1 in 6.
And what is 1 in 6? I kept reading that, it didn't make sense to me.
1 in 6 is an organization that serves male survivors of sexual violence.
Male survivors of sexual violence.
Okay, thank you. I kept reading that over and over again. I kept saying, that doesn't make sense to me, but I thank you for explaining that. She was appointed to serve on the California Domestic Violence Advisory Council, served as former president of the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault, and the founding board member of the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence. She is the founder of Denim Day in Los Angeles and the United States, a black belt in karate, and a master self-defense defender. Next, we have Kay Buck, and she will be focusing on human trafficking. Kay is the Executive Director for Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking. Kay has nearly 25 years of experience leading anti-trafficking initiatives in the United States and abroad. Joining the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking in 2003, Kay leads one of the largest running anti-slavery organizations in the nation, serving thousands of survivors and their families with comprehensive care to rebuild their lives. Kay is responsible for creating Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking, one-of-a-kind survivor leadership program, which empowers survivors to use their voices collectively to impact systematic change, resulting in better laws to combat trafficking, and a White House strategic action plan, which launched in 2014. Next, we have Commander Cheryl Moody, who is my friend, and I've known her for years, and she will also be focusing on human trafficking. Commander Moody holds one of the highest-ranking women positions in the city of Pasadena as a commander of the Pasadena Police Department. Commander Moody was born in Kansas City, Missouri, but grew up in Long Beach, California. After high school, Commander Moody served for 3 years in the United States Air Force as a reservist. Commander Moody worked with the Long Beach Police Department prior to joining Pasadena Police Department as an officer in 1992. During her career, During her career with Pasadena Police Department, she has worked several assignments. Commander Moody is one of the founding members of the San Gabriel Valley chapter of the National Organization of Black Law Executives, better known as NAVO to many of us. And that was started in 2006. So we are glad to have our panelists, and I'm going to jump right into the questions. And so we're going to focus the first questions on employment and earnings. We all know there's a wage gap between women and men's earning. But isn't it all due to women making different occupational choices or taking time out of the workforce for family reasons?
Thank you.
And that's for Kelly.
Is that working? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for that question. And I want to thank Mount St. Mary's for doing such a fabulous job in illustrating how important these issues are, not only for women in the state, but at the city level too. And the wage gap is one that is a lot of controversy around. Some people like to think of the wage gap as just a myth. But in reality, we know that there are many factors that do contribute to women earning less. Economists like to talk about two main reasons: educational differences, occupational differences, and industry differences. And then the second reason is just differences in hours of work and work experience. But even when you account for all of those legitimate factors for why there might be a wage difference, there's always some residual that just can't be explained. And that's where we think discrimination may still impact the earnings gap. It could be intentional, or probably more often, more subtle biases that contribute to women earning less over time.
Thank you very much. How does a college education contribute to women's earnings over their lifetime?
Education is one of the factors that makes a huge difference in earnings for everyone. For instance, here in California, a bachelor's degree raises women's earnings by over $20,000, and for men, there's even higher premium, over $30,000. And in the city of Pasadena, there's a great number of women who have higher education than compared to women across the state. For instance, according to the census, about 56% of women in the city hold a bachelor's degree or higher, and that compares to only about 30% of women in California. So I think that that's one of the things that we see that makes a huge difference in the closer wage gap for women in Pasadena, is that there are great there are great numbers of women who have higher education, bachelor's degrees and higher, and that opens up higher paying jobs to them and contributes to lower earnings gap.
Thank you. Why are there so many women in high paying industries like engineering and computer science?
So few.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Why are there so few?
Yeah.
I was trying to put us all there. But why are there so few women in high-paying industries like engineering and computer science?
You know, that's a question that we are asked a lot. And when we look at the evidence, we see that women have great aptitude for the sciences and math. They do really well in those fields. But there's something else that's going on both in academia and in industry that contributes to a climate where women don't feel welcome. And even when they do stay and work in those, high-tech and computer and other scientific fields, they often face just a climate that makes it difficult for them to succeed, especially if they choose to have a very full family life in addition to a professional life. And all of those factors of women not feeling welcome, not feeling like they can advance easily in the field, that it's always a struggle, leads to many women deciding to move on and try different occupations. And so we see that even if there's a problem of fewer women going into the occupations to begin with, but once they do get in, many of them leave. So there's a retention issue. And this is an issue that women are starting to speak out about themselves. In fact, the LA Times has been running a series on women in tech and some of the challenges they face. And I encourage you all to follow it. It's good.
Thank you. I have one final question I want to ask you. The President and Secretary of Labor are promoting apprenticeship as a good model for expansion of jobs that pay middle-class wages. What is apprenticeship and why is it a good model?
Apprenticeship is a very long model that dates back to, really the beginning of time when people started working. And it is a system where a young person is paired with an experienced worker and learns both on the job and in classroom the skills and experiences they need to advance to what's frequently called a journeyman level. And at the end of an apprenticeship, there's usually a credential that's earned, sometimes a 2-year or a 4-year type equivalent credential. And that speaks volumes to what that person's skill level is and helps them command really good jobs at middle class or higher wages. One of the reasons that the department is so interested in apprenticeship is that the starting average salary for apprenticeship is about $50,000. And those are the kind of wages that everyone strives for. It's the kind of wages that you can really support a family on, and a very trusted way of building a solid skill base. Unfortunately, women are few in the apprenticeships, and it's one reason that we are encouraging women to take a look at all the variety of apprenticeships that are out there. There's over 1,000 different occupations that have apprenticeships. And the department is also promoting some new opportunities to grow apprenticeships in new areas, such as in computer technology, advanced manufacturing, in healthcare, and even, of course, in construction. So we really encourage women and those who work with women to take a look at the apprenticeship model, because it's a fabulous way to get women into non-traditional careers and at very good wages.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Now we're going to focus on homelessness and housing. And Cynthia, I have a couple of questions for you. Are we seeing many people who become homeless due to the living wage being too low? Is that one of the reasons why? And how are we assisting them?
Well, certainly, and thank you. Thank you for having me today. The report was outstanding. Thank you so much for that work, Mount St. Mary's, for the report. The living wage for the community as a whole being low contributes to a factor of homelessness, absolutely. For women specifically, because they also are faced with raising families often. Many women are head of their households, and so by being underemployed or unemployed can certainly contribute to that factor. Some of the other economic factors, of course, with homelessness go around divorce, separation. It could be underemployment, unemployment, and many women are faced with child care crisis, that they aren't able to find adequate child care. So our agency is just always been an advocate for trying to partner with different child care industries and different making available child care resources for women so that they can earn more. We have a job development program actually that is really focused on helping all individuals to increase their employment and their earnings opportunities. It's called Sources Career Development Program, and that's where we focus really not only on just finding a job, but also increasing the ability to earn more earnings.
Thank you very much. What is Union Station's homeless shelter approach to homelessness?
Union Station has always had a very comprehensive approach to homelessness in our community. It starts with our board of directors, and they are outstanding and dedicated to our mission. We also have thousands and thousands of community donors and volunteers that support the agency and have been a part of our agency for well over 40 years. And then there's the dedicated staff that we have at Union Station that embrace our mission and really go out of their way to make sure that we have a welcoming environment so that anyone coming in, whether male or female, can seek services at Union Station and start to rebuild their lives and work on their journey to end homelessness. We also have many, many new initiatives at Union Station where we're starting to go out into the community. As you saw from the report, there are many unsheltered individuals in this community. And our new initiatives allow us to have staff that go out into the community to find our homeless population, to meet with them, to talk to them, and try to encourage them to seek services to end their homelessness. We have been doing that now for about a year, and so far have reached out to about 600 individuals over the last 6 months, actually, trying to encourage them, those who are more vulnerable and who are chronically homeless, to seek housing and come into our shelters and look for resources.
Thank you. So you talked about you have 600 individuals. So of that 600, how many of those are homeless women from the San Gabriel Valley? And do you have statistics for the LA County as well? And I know we did hear some numbers earlier, but for you, Cynthia?
Our Union Station, we serve about 2,000 people a year, and about 25% of that is actually women, either individual single women or women from families. We have a 20-bed dormitory here in Pasadena that we opened in 2008, which was designed specifically to meet the needs of the homeless women in Pasadena. And since that time, we've been able to serve thousands of women and help them to rebuild and transform. We also have the now resources and programs with our local colleges, where we are having MSW intern students come in to provide women-specific programs as well as family programs, so that we're really able to give more resources and more attention to our women that we serve to help them to make the transition from homelessness.
Thank you. So my next question, I think you answered when you addressed how many, some of the ways that you provide services to the homeless community, homeless women.
Well,
do you have a special program that you offer just to women for Union Station?
Our women's dormitory, as I mentioned, was designed just for women. We have our credentialed staff that focus on women issues, parenting. A lot of parenting classes, child development classes are conducted by our MSW interns now. That's a resource that is free to us, so therefore we're able to really maximize that and offer that one-on-one information to women, whereas before we were limited with staff resources. So now we're able to offer that far broader than we have in the past. So we're hoping that that will make a difference in the lives of women here in the community.
With the veteran population of women, what number of veteran women do you actually see?
For Union Station, our veteran population is relatively low, and that's because we partner with agencies such as New Directions and the VASH program, who really specialize in those services. So we really just collaborate more. Our numbers are probably 1% of our women population are actually veterans. So it's really very low, but we really encourage anyone that comes that is a veteran to really seek those veteran services that are available to them.
Thank you so very much. So Lindsay, going right back into the veterans. And so now we're going to focus on women veterans. What are some of the unique needs and challenges women veterans have that are different from men?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me today. I appreciate the City of Pasadena, the Commission, and Mount St. Mary's focusing on women veterans. There is a relatively small population here in Pasadena, in the city, of women who've served in the military, but I hope you all understand that that's growing rapidly, and that in a decade we'll be looking to expand to about 15% of the overall veterans population. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background really quick to put some of this in context about veterans. There are 180,000 women who have served in the military approximately who reside here in California. That's about 10% of the overall veterans population in the state. So the state veterans population is about 1.8 million. We have the largest veterans population of any state in the nation, and that's very significant because we will continue to see our veterans population in certain demographics, particularly with women, grow over the next 10 to 20 years. And the reason that this is so significant is that remains a major disconnect between the civilian population that looks to recognize veterans for their service and honor them, and the veterans who've actually served. Only 1% of the population, of the American population, actually serves in the military, which means that it's a very interesting process of transition and reintegration into civilian society for those of us that have served, because we come from such a culturally distinct place and institution that really is quite unique to the American experience. And so for women in particular, there are some needs and challenges that overlap with what men experience when they transition out of the military. They're looking for educational opportunities. They may have suffered a moral or physical injury while serving. They may come from an economically disadvantaged background where they're needing more assistance and resources when they come out of the military. They may not know what's available to them in their communities because they've been somewhat disconnected from those communities for a while. This is really only amplified for women who serve. We're not recognized as veterans. We don't have high and tight haircuts. We're not carrying some. We don't have green backpacks. We don't have the hats that say World War II or Korean War vet. We're not easily distinguished, and I'm still waiting for someone to come out with a ball cap that I would really actually wear that says veteran. Hasn't happened yet. So there's nothing really to distinguish us. We don't fit the stereotype of what we think of as veteran, and that's still true in mainstream media and popular culture. We're still always identifying males as the veteran image, and that's changing rapidly. The women veteran population is incredibly ethnically diverse. More African American women are represented not just here in the Pasadena veteran population, but in the national veteran population and in the active duty forces. More Latina women are joining the American military forces at higher rates than any other current demographic. So this is wonderful. It's an incredibly ethnically diverse and rich culture of veterans that are coming back to your communities, but they have some real challenges. So for women, that includes not only not being recognized, but it also includes going and accessing services that haven't been traditionally designed for them. They've been created historically for the male veteran, particularly the single male veteran. And so when women are accessing housing resources, when they're accessing healthcare benefits with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, when they're going to community services, if they're not recognized as veterans, if no one's asking the question if they've ever served in the military, and if they don't have services available to them, they become a particularly vulnerable population. And they become even more vulnerable if they've experienced a moral or physical injury while serving, if they have children, if they're caregiving for a spouse who is injured and who also served in the military. And all of those things are more common. It's more likely for a woman to have minor children in her care, a woman veteran to have minor children in her care, a woman veteran to be a caregiver to a disabled spouse, and that presents a particularly vulnerable situation if she's having economic issues, if she's having physical or mental health care issues, and we see that over and over again. Did I answer the question?
So tell me, what is the toolkit for women, for the women rosters that your program released? What's that looks like?
So at the California Department of Veterans Affairs, we are the state agency that really represents and helps connect veterans to their state and federal benefits here in California. Each state in the nation has some sort of a either a commission or a state agency appointed by the governor who does exactly that. And so there are a lot of benefits here in California that veterans are eligible for. For my program specifically, we focus on advocacy and outreach to women. Obviously, for all the reasons I just spoke about, we have to find new ways to target and market to our women veteran population. So we've designed things to do that. So we have a women veterans roster. The roster is where we ask women who've served to sign up for the roster. They get email information and notification and direct communication with our office about upcoming events, programs, services, and benefits. And then they can also stand up and be counted. They can be recognized as a separate and distinct population, which sometimes that's what we really want, is just someone to recognize that we served in the military. And then we've also, in the last year, designed an outreach toolkit. And the commission has a print copy of the toolkit, but anybody is eligible to download the toolkit from our website, which is calvet.ca.gov. The toolkit is designed for organizations. Anybody that wants to serve women veterans better, that wants to learn more about us as a population, can use this. They can get facts and statistics about us. They can get further reading and resources, and they can even get action items and a to-do list that include things like putting a button for our roster on your website, talking to your county board of supervisors or your city council members about how to incorporate the conversation of women veterans into your long-term planning. It could also include simple things like changing the way you ask questions when you screen your clients, regardless of what your program is that you're serving. Instead of saying, "Are you a veteran?" say, "Have you ever served in the military?" Because that alone will yield a higher rate of response from women who have served in the military who don't necessarily identify as veterans. And so the toolkit, again, please download it, take a look at it. It's got some very lovely pictures in there too.
Well, thank you very much. Next, we're going to focus on domestic violence. So, Patty, how do victims of domestic violence get help, and what are the barriers to doing so?
Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone. Everybody's thanking each other. It's what you look so great from up here. You should see. A great gathering. I thank you to the commission for inviting me and putting this whole panel and event together, and thank you to Mount St. Mary's for continuing looking at gender-based issues locally and across the state. Seeking help has continuously been an issue for battered women and families that are suffering with domestic violence. And I think our responses to assisting and reaching out really has improved. And that's the good news. And the way that folks can reach out is certainly by directly calling the domestic violence hotlines. Peace Over Violence is one of those agencies that has emergency services, a hotline, and we also have intervention services and counseling and case management and legal advocacy. We do not have shelter. We do not run a shelter for battered women, but we network with all the wonderful programs that do provide shelter in the whole county of Los Angeles. In Pasadena, what we've been doing is, and I think there's been a real shift in the movement to end domestic violence, which I also want to include sexual violence in that, because that's an important component and that links, is that collaboration is really a best practice. No one can, no group, no police department, no court, no judge, no Department of Children and Family Services can fix this problem, and families can't fix it on their own. So the fact that we've now have coordinated responses and network together is making a real difference, so that when someone enters the system from any point, whether it's a hotline or going straight to the police or being involved in some of the public social services, they can connect with more what we would say is wraparound services. And that is a best practice, because as you know, this is a complex issue, very complex issue. So we have good services. And I want to say in the city of Pasadena, what we're doing right now, which I'm so excited about, is that Peace Over Violence and the Pasadena Police Department are developing what you call a domestic abuse response team. And that's exactly that kind of collaboration that I'm talking about. And DARTS, it's called the DART, Domestic Abuse Response Team, is considered a best practice. And we're going to have that right here in Pasadena. And that's going to make a big difference. So the barriers for victim survivors of domestic violence to reach out for help are pretty deep. Part of it has to do with the fact that they're in a relationship, and relationships are complicated, and love is also part of that relationship. And also in terms of, everything that we're talking about, every issue here, foundationally, the trauma of domestic violence and sexual violence is part of every issue that we're talking about here, including the military with the amount of military sexual violence that goes on there. So people in all walks of life, whatever their employment status is, many people have histories of trauma, whether it's as a child or as an adult. So, and often the trauma is unattended. So it interferes with people fulfilling their life path, right? So you have that kind of personal trauma that goes on. And then you have access to services. Often people, still, even though we have so much information, it doesn't reach every population about how to get help, right? Often when people reach out, there's a lot of judgment. They'll call up or they'll show up somewhere, and victims of domestic violence often feel judged, that they're doing something wrong. One of the key issues that we're dealing with and have dealt with for a while is there is, when someone reports, I say a woman reports domestic violence and there are children in the family, there is a good chance that the children will be taken away because there is domestic violence in the family, even though that the battered woman, for example, or the mother, is doing everything that she can. It's viewed by those of us who work in the field as an inability to protect because they have a problem in the family, but it's viewed by the public agencies as failure to protect, and that's seen as a crime in and of itself. So if you know about that, you have a friend who had their children taken away because they reported domestic violence, and it's happening in your family, in your relationship, that's going to be a barrier to reaching out. You know? So sometimes the consequences of coming forward, a person may decide that's even worse than staying where I am. You know, so the idea of really getting into the depths of it and the complexity, I think, is an important part. And I am so grateful that we've made so much progress in our country and in our community. But obviously, we still have a long way to go, and there's a lot of nuance and a lot of subtlety to work on.
Thank you so much. All of these topics are so important, but I'm just going to ask you to briefly touch on, there's a question here about teen relationships and the abuse and the violence in teen relationships, and it's so prominent in young girls.
Yes, exactly. Because, you know, when you think about preventing domestic violence, many of us went to the most logical place. If you're going to prevent domestic violence, adult domestic violence, let's look at where it might be starting. So that means you have to look at dating, and you have to look at adolescents. You have to even look at children, because children see everything. Even when you think they're not looking at us as parents, they're watching everything, right? So right in the home is where some of the habits start. So in terms of adolescent, that's the adolescents. We're saying, 11, 12, because, young people even date earlier, even though they don't call it dating. I don't even know what they call it. They change the names and everything all the time. You gotta love them. You gotta love them. They're a very creative population, adolescents, great energy. And they do it so they can confuse us as adults. Just remember that. But so young people are beginning to date, right? And they have seen patterns. They watch media. They listen to music. And they're getting their images of what it means to be a young man, what it means to be a young woman, right within their family, in the education system, and in media that's all around them, right? So they start to mimic what the adults do, right? So you can start having, at early age, research shows that 20 to 25% of teenage relationships has the cycle of violence in it. That's a lot. That's one in 4 and 1 in 5. So it starts early, So it behooves us to pay attention to that and have educational programs and parents becoming educated. I wrote a book called When Dating Becomes Dangerous. It's a guide for parents around relationship violence with their teens. Parents have to have discussions with their children, with their teens at an early age about what it means to date, the safety around it, and what does it mean to have a healthy relationship. I mean, we could probably, those of us could have like wonderful conversations of when we were teens. How many conversations did we have about what constitutes a healthy relationship? Well, we need to have them now with our young people, whether we are teachers or educators or parents. Very, very important. And teen dating violence doesn't exactly mimic adult relationship violence, but it has some of similar elements in it. And one of the things that's really important that we need to know is that developmentally, the brain is in process of being constructed. You know, and so when you have trauma at an early age, that does impact your capacity to grow and make good decisions. This part of the brain in adolescence, it's not there. It doesn't end till 25. And thank goodness for the rest of us, we've learned that the plasticity of the brain, we could actually improve our brain at any age. Thank goodness. That's good news for all of us. So I think that if we're rich, as we are interested in prevention, we need to focus on young people and teenagers.
Thank you so much, Patty. So now we're going to go into human trafficking, and we have Kay Buck and Commander Moody, and I'm going to ask questions starting off with Kay. What is human trafficking? Tell us what that is.
Sure. Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting us. You heard a brief definition of human trafficking earlier. Thank you for that. But I've found that maybe describing an actual case will hit home for everyone most importantly. And the reason is sometimes the media doesn't always portray human trafficking for what it really is. So in essence, human trafficking is modern slavery. It is exploitation where someone is either forced, so we have had cases where people are chained to a bed or locked inside of a house and they're not allowed any contact with the outside world. There's also fraud, which means that most people that we see as clients, because we are at CAST a service provider to survivors of human trafficking, there's fraud. So people are basically tricked or duped into thinking that they're going to have a better life. Now that could be the young mom from Mexico who believes that she's coming here for a legitimate job to support her family and her children. But when she gets here, her passport is confiscated. In absolutely 100% of our cases involving foreign national survivors, people trafficked from outside of the US here, their passports or their identification is taken. And then there's another third element to the definition of trafficking, and that's coercion. Because not always are survivors or victims forced to stay somewhere. Many times they are actually just threatened. So they're told, if you talk to anyone, if you try to get away from me, I'll hunt you down and I will kill you. Or I know where your kids live back home and I'm gonna kill them. So any mom or anyone with loved ones will stay quiet and stay in that situation. This is really important. The force, fraud, or coercion is a really important phrase to know when we're defining human trafficking. What human trafficking is not is smuggling. A lot of people confuse the two. So smuggling, in essence, is a business transaction, really, and human trafficking is when the person is not allowed to leave after that business transaction. So we have had cases where trafficking does occur at the end of the line in a situation of smuggling, but most times in a smuggling circumstance, human trafficking does not occur. Also, what human trafficking is not is prostitution. There is definitely a relationship between the two, but the difference is when we're talking about kids, minors, who are forced into the commercial sex trade. They legally cannot consent to sex. That is automatically defined as human trafficking in this country. And it's an important distinction to make because we want to protect kids who are forced into this terrible life. And then adults. There are survivors who are forced into what's called sex trafficking. And again, that's through force or fraud or coercion. But not all women or sometimes men in the commercial sex trade are victims of human trafficking. Okay, it really is, it depends on the exploitation and if they have the ability to leave that situation. So here's an example where a woman, and actually she was 19 at the time, she was born and raised in Los Angeles. She thought that she was meeting someone at a park to get a babysitting job. And, you know, this man charmed her and made her believe that he had an interest in her romantically. They had 1 or 2 dates, and after that, he beat her up and then put her out on the street in the commercial sex trade. And unfortunately, and we're going to talk a lot about the law enforcement response and the need for law enforcement training on this issue, unfortunately, in this particular case, the victim tried to talk with a law enforcement officer who was in a police car at the time, and because that officer wasn't trained, he didn't listen to her, and she ended up in the sex trade for 3.5 more years before she found our hotline number and called, and we were able to get help. Now, this is a systems issue. It's not, you know, there's nothing against law enforcement. It's just really that there's not enough resources to get all of the law enforcement agency trained. And it's one of the reasons, as women, it's so important for us to advocate in our communities for that. Law enforcement officers need to be trained on human trafficking, as well as other issues like domestic violence and sexual assault. So that's a long definition of trafficking.
You answered quite a few questions. Thank
home.
you. Commander, for Pasadena, tell this audience, how is Pasadena impacted by human trafficking? Because I would think in Pasadena we don't have human trafficking.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. But
Then we had a call.
But you know, human trafficking is really, really hard to define. It's hard to see. We remember when it comes to prostitution, the girls on the street, the guys picking them up in the Cadillacs and things like that. Well, it's no longer that anymore. And for us, as far as law enforcement, part of our main focus is the juveniles. It's the young girls who are being sucked into this trade, the sex trade. Now, the other forms of human trafficking, it's a little harder to identify, like with the labor issues and the domestics. But with the girls who are getting caught up in this, that's what we're really kind of focusing on right now. As you know, we have several girls' homes here in the city where foster children are, specifically females, and they're the ones who are the most vulnerable because they don't have parents there. There's so many of the girls inside. I mean, we get calls for missing and runaways almost daily. And what we found is a few of these girls, I know a couple years ago, 2 of the girls got caught up in a big LAPD sweep for human trafficking in LA. So they were brought back here, and I do believe they got the resources they needed, but the officers at the time, when the girls were returned, didn't really understand the whole human trafficking thing. So we've worked with the CAST and other organizations to get our officers better trained on the questions to ask, some of the things to identify, to see that these girls are part of something, or they're being victimized, and don't treat them like suspects.
Thank you. Kay, tell me, what does your organization abolish slavery and trafficking? What role do you play in this?
Great question. So we are the largest service provider in the country. So we provide direct services, both social, shelter, and legal services to victims of human trafficking who are trafficked from 59 countries around the world into Los Angeles. We serve the county of Los Angeles. And I think what makes CAST unique is that because we work long-term with victims, on average, people stay with us for about 2 years. And we are able to collect a lot of data and information in order to inform public policy. So an example of that is last year we were learning, well, we've been learning for about 5 years that there's a new industry that's really taking advantage of this growing problem of human trafficking, and that's the industry of foreign labor brokers who go into quite impoverished regions of the world. And they usually, by the way, send women so that they're trustworthy to recruit people. And they charge these potential victims a fee upwards of $30,000. Now, for someone from rural Mexico or rural Thailand, $30,000 is a lot of money. So they usually get that money by borrowing it from loan sharks in their community, which then when they're not paying it back, puts their kids and their families at risk. And so we were learning that these fees that brokers were charging kept getting larger and larger. And so we took that to Sacramento, and we wrote a bill that our governor signed late last year, so that now this industry of foreign labor brokers or contractors is now being regulated by the Department of Labor. And so it's really important as we work these cases of, it could be human trafficking or domestic violence, working with veterans, when we learn from the actual population that policies impact, that we do something constructive with that information, so we're creating policies that make sense to protect the victims and to, really truly help them rebuild their lives.
Thank you so much. And in closing, I just want to ask Commander Moody a tough question. What can we do in Pasadena to stop human trafficking?
Well, what Chief Sanchez has put into place, we've had several community meetings to form strategies with the community to help identify what's going on. So he's met with several different groups, including CAST, All Saints was there, I have to read my notes here, Peace Over Violence. But we're trying to get the word out to the community because we can't do it all. It's so hidden, These girls, they're not easily identifiable. But you will see, if you see something, the campaign for the city is if you see something, say something. If you see a young girl out on the bus bench at about noon and you know she should be at school, you should call. You should call it in and say, hey, this looks a little suspicious to me. Now, you don't have to call 911, but you should call the non-emergency number and say, hey, there's a young girl sitting out here and it looks a little strange. Would you have an officer come out and talk to her? That's what it's going to take. That's how we're going to get our foot in the door to communicate with these girls. We also have for our officers, as far as training goes, we've given them these cards to carry around with them. There's cards from CAST, and then there's one from Helping Hands. And these are agencies or referrals that these girls can call if they need help. Because a lot of times they won't tell the officer what's going on. Because, like you said, fear, either their family's been held hostage or these girls are so caught into this drug that this guy has coerced her into, and I say guy, but so they won't talk to us. But we give them these cards and say, if you won't talk to us, call somebody. Call and get some help. But on the other end of that, as far as prosecuting the actual human trafficker, that's hard to do as well. Because first you got to get this girl to say, yes, he's forcing me to have the sex for money. And two, these guys usually don't want to go to trial. So they'll take a deal. They'll take a plea and they'll get like 3 years. So honestly, more laws, we need more laws. We need more enforcement of these laws from legislature. But we're doing what we can here. But like you said, there's not a huge problem, but we're staying on top of it.
Great. Thank you so very much. I would like to thank the entire panel, very impressive. I would like to thank Commission on the Status of Women for taking the time to put this important forum together. Thank you so much. And that concludes our work for today. And there will not be questions from the audience. Yes. Okay. Well, you know what, not at this time. If you just bear with us, I'm sure Char will allow you to have an opportunity to say some things. But we're going to keep the program going and honor all the guests in the audience. Thank you. Thank you.
What amazing information that we have here. Part of our responsibility as the Commission on the Status of Women is to advise City Council on the special needs and concerns of women of all ages, races, ethnic and cultural backgrounds, religious convictions, and economic and social circumstances. And these duties include recommending programs and legislation to promote and ensure equal rights and opportunities for all women in Pasadena. So what you've seen here today is a representation of what we're responsible for. So we're very happy to bring this information again. Oh, at this time, I'm just going to breathe, and I have a very exciting keynote speaker that's come to join us this morning to give us the conclusion of our program. So stay seated and hold on, because we're going to bring to the stage here Carolyn Webb DeMacias. Carolyn is the Vice President of University of Southern California, recently completed 6 months as Chief of Staff in the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education in the Department of Education. She served in this capacity as the presidential appointee of our President Barack Obama. She was primary advisor to the Assistant Secretary of Education and oversaw office management. Ms. Webb DeMacias has a long history in education and politics. Her background includes being appointed to the University of Southern California, as I mentioned, as Vice President for External Relations, serving as Senior Advisor to Mayor Antonio Villagrosa. She provided counsel in various areas, including educational policy, and she was an appointee to the California African American Museum. Ms. Webb DeMacias also was Chief of Staff to our Los Angeles County Supervisor, Mark Ridley Thomas. Let's give a warm welcome to Carolyn Webb DeMacias.
All right. I was told not to worry about the time. I said, how much time? She said 20 minutes. All right. It's a moving target. Let me start by saying I am so pleased to be here today among you women and men who are interested in this subject of empowerment. I need to make a correction. I'm Vice President Emeritus of the University of Southern California, which means I'm no longer there. I want to first of all thank the Commission for inviting me to be your speaker today. I love public speaking, have always loved to get in front of an audience. I probably should have been an actress or something. And I want to thank in particular Mount St. Mary's and Eleanor for the outstanding work that you've done and for your continued work in watching this data and reporting it to us. The panel, I know you will all agree, are all outstanding, empowered women making a difference where they are and trying to impact these numbers. I, however, am going to do something a little bit different. I want to lighten the mood a little bit, and I want to tell you that there is hope. I want to speak to you about empowered women who are doing extraordinary things in their lives that will make a difference in this data. Women who are artists, educators, scientists, business people, entertainers, politicians. They've achieved their measures of success, and they're going to enrich and change the data that we've just heard about. So let me start by defining empowerment. Now, there are two definitions that I want to talk about this morning. One is empowerment, which is a transitive verb. I was an English major, so that's important. This transitive verb gives power or authority, especially legal or official. So we often talk about the empowerment of women as the role of government or business or the legal system. And that empowerment is to provide women with an equal playing field. It's to invest in women the ability to compete, to survive, to thrive. This type of power trains and protects, and in its best form, it invests in women and in men. But there's a different definition of empowerment, and it is one that is an active verb, to empower. This definition is one that is active on behalf of women, and it is the one that I want to talk about today. Empower, the active verb, is to develop, to claim, to act out of personal agency, to acquire, to achieve, and once achieved, share that power, that knowledge, or that resource. To effectively empower and be empowered, under this definition, one must have the following: principles that govern your decision making, life goals that require both growth and stretch, a mission that you clearly understand and can articulate, and a definition of success that includes success greater than personal, more than self-aggrandizement. Now, don't get too upset. We're not going to ignore that transitive verb. That has to happen. But the active verb is the one that allows you to step up and step out, because you acquire, you embrace, and you own. I'm going to ask you to do something right now. I want you to relax. I want you to take a deep breath. I want you to exhale it. And then I want you to come with me on a journey. Now, we're going to astro travel. That means our bodies are here, but our minds and our spirits are going to take a little journey. We're going to journey through a community of empowered women. Not in any particular order. I'm not indicating by the order in which we meet them that one is more important than the other. They are all different and they are equally empowered. So come on along with me on this little trip. First, we're going to Clinton, Tennessee. We just landed and we're looking down on acres and acres of a farmland that used to be owned by Alex Haley. This land has now been purchased by the Children's Defense Fund, and standing on the porch of the lodge is Marion Wright Edelman. You know Miss Edelman. She's a lawyer, she's an educator, she's a civil rights activist, she's a bold, fearless, and empowered woman. And we wave, Miss Edelman, Miss Edelman. And she's waving back, and we're saying, ah! And then we notice she's not waving at us. She's waving at buses that are loaded with college students who are arriving on this day to begin training as servant leaders for the freedom schools that have been established to teach children all over this country how to read. And she's smiling because she knows those 1,800 students that night will raise the roof in jubilation as they learn and begin their training so they can go out across this country, 107 cities, thousands of children, this very summer, and begin to teach them to read. And beneath it all, they're teaching these children about civic engagement and civil rights. They are using the fundamental training that began in 1964 with the freedom schools in Mississippi. Miss Edelman is tough and very, very empowered. But we can't stop here, so we have to hurry along. Let's get in the air. We're coming all the way back to California. We hear that there's a celebrity in our midst. Who's that? Hillary Clinton? Oh, that's right. She was at the Silicon Valley just the other day doing a lecture and talking to women about empowerment. Let's ask her a question. Miss Clinton, will you or won't you? Well, don't be surprised she's not going to answer. She has learned how to be a diplomat. She just did finish as our Secretary of State after all. We didn't expect to hear it from her, but you know it'd be very well to have some gender difference in the White House behind that desk. But she better watch out because Elizabeth Warren is coming on strong. Now, speaking of the Oval Office and being in Washington, D.C., let's breeze on over to Emancipation Hall. You know, it's in the Capitol's Visitor Center. And there is a bust of one Miss Sojourner Truth. Were you there in 2009 when that bust was unveiled? Were you there when our own local artist Lane, was the sculptress who unveiled it? Talk about empowered women. That day, there was then Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. There was the aforementioned Hillary Clinton. There was our own First Lady, Michelle Obama. And then there was Miss Sojourner Truth, present and accounted for in a bronze bust that stands today. You need to check her out. Now, Artist Lane is a local artist. She's Canadian-born, African-American, and you can see some of her work in our state California African American Museum on any given day in Exposition Park. She is called an artist without boundaries. That makes me think of somebody else. An artist without boundaries. I think we need to whiz on over and check out Miss Angelina Jolie. You know, she's over here at the Four Seasons right now trying to make a deal for her next directorial debut. You know, she did pretty well with Unbroken, so she feels quite empowered. Artists, directors. We need to go to Shondaland. I hear there's a woman in town who runs Thursday nights on a major network. A woman who got a master's degree from USC. Did I say USC? Who is a creator, a writer, an executive producer, a showrunner. She has female stars. They have even redefined what a fan is, called them a gladiator. Let's see how long it takes Webster's to catch up with that definition. Whew, you know, right now I could stop for a cup of tea. But we don't have time for that because a cup of tea takes 2 hours. Oh well, another day, ladies, maybe at my house. For the moment, though, I hear that there's a seminar going on right now, not too far from here. And Susie Orman and Dr. Julianne Malveaux are talking to folks about personal finance and the economy. Now, you know, that ought to be quite interesting. These are both brilliant ladies. Orman is a personal finance expert, an author, a talk show host, and she focuses on the connection between self-worth and net worth. As she says, there's a difference and we ought to know what it is. Dr. Malveaux, an economist, an author, a liberal and social commentator, former president of Bennett College for Women, Dr. Malveaux talks about Wall Street, Main Street, and the side street. Their seminar is someplace we need to be. Both come at income inequality from different directions, but they come to some of the same conclusions. That's going to be a high energy session, and I'm sorry we can't join them. Okay, we can't stay here. All sounds good. But I promised Maria Contreras-Sweet, she's the administrator of the Small Business Administration, that we might buzz on back to Washington and take her some of this California sunshine. She's really having a hard time with her second winter in Washington, D.C. We should feel sorry for her. Now, you should remember Maria. She was the executive chairwoman and the founder of Pro America Bank, the first Latina-owned commercial bank in California in 35 years. She's bad. Before this, she served as the Secretary of Business, Transportation, and Housing at the state level. And I remember her from back in the day when she was the Public Affairs Director at 7-Up RC Bottling Company, and I had a similar job at Pacific Bell. Who knew? I think she, Susie Orman, and Dr. Malveaux could have quite a conversation. Well, there are a lot of other women that we could say hello to. But you know, like all wonderful visits with old friends, time is just too short. However, I do want to say hello to our newest county elected supervisors, Ms. Hilda Solis and Ms. Sheila Kuehl. Now, with their election just recently, they raised the number of female supervisors by 100%. Supervisor Solis was most recently Secretary of Labor in the Obama administration. He has really good skill at selecting people. She served before that in the U.S. House of Representatives, and she's the daughter of immigrants, as is Contreras Sweet. Solis was the first Hispanic woman to serve in the California State Senate back in 1994. Now, as for Sheila Kuehl, who's a close personal friend and who wouldn't understand how I did all of this astral traveling and did not stop in to see her, so we won't tell her we were here. Sheila is one more lawyer whose brains and skill make her a formidable opponent and an excellent representative. She served 8 years in the state Senate, 6 years in the state assembly. She's the founding director of the Public Policy Institute of the Santa Monica Community College. She was a law professor at LMU, UCLA, and USC. All three. And she co-founded the California Women's Law Center that Patty mentioned earlier. We must absolutely visit these women on another day. But you know, I really wanted to visit Dr. Mae Jameson because she actually did her little astro traveling thing. She was on the Space Shuttle Endeavour in 1992, 127 revolutions in orbit, 190 hours in the spacecraft. Dr. Mae Jameson is probably an anomaly because she is an engineer, a physician, a Peace Corps rep. She is a dancer. She holds 9 honorary doctorates in science, engineering, letters, and humanities. And she is currently the principal investigator of something called a 100-Year Starship, funded by the Department of Defense. Mae Jameson, empowered. Photo in the dictionary under the word empower. So, ladies and gentlemen, empowerment for women is something that we continue to strive towards. We want to increase the equity and decrease the inequities. But in the meantime, there are women who are empowered, who are working, who are making a difference. While we have to keep our feet on terra firma here, know that empowered women are all around us and that we benefit from their presence.
Wow. Talk about empowerment. Thank you, Carolyn. It was absolutely fabulous. So Hi everyone, I'm Ann Wolf. I'm the chair of the Commission on the Status of Women for the City of Pasadena. And I wanted to tell you real quickly a little bit about how the report came along. In 2013, our then Commissioner, Donna Cheney, brought us the report from Mount St. Mary's. And we commissioners were blown away by the information because it was statistics. It wasn't anecdotal. It's the sort of thing that we needed to have in order to get policy changed. And we were so excited. And we wanted to produce that report for Pasadena. So we started, first with Donna, and when her term expired, Tamika Farr picked up the flag. And Tamika's the one who has tirelessly worked alongside Mount St. Mary's to produce this report. Thank you, Tamika. And we are so grateful to Mount St. Mary's for doing this. You are awesome, and we love the Mount. Today's program would not have been possible without the help of many. Thank you, panelists. You are amazing. And the information you brought us is phenomenal. Our lovely songstress, who happens to be related to Shar. It's her daughter. Thank you. To Lena. Thank you, Lena. You pulled it together for us. We love it. To our sponsors, last June, when we were launching our survival guide, which we have in the back, the Commission on the Status of Women also does a survival guide, the folks that came to that particular event said, there's nobody that pulls women together. So here we are. We're together, and we are really powerful. Take a look at the logos that are on the back. There were 30 organizations that have helped us get the word out and who will help us implement the new policy that we think needs to be done. So thank you very much. And we had wonderful volunteers. The Junior League stepped in to help us. The volunteers who are part of the City of Pasadena, Commissioner Zavala and her family are here helping us. The Spot Catering, fabulous food, huh? And yes, this is Jacob Mars. Complimentary. We're so excited. We could not have done this, of course, without the support of the City of Pasadena. And Roseanne Adanto, Jeff Chellen, and the Villa Park staff. The library, Jan Saunders, Eric Massengel, and Kristen Annis, who were more than gracious to us and let us come here several times to set everything up. And it takes a leader to be able to manage one of these things. And our leader for this event was Shar Bland. Shar, stand up. And I want to thank the commissioners. You are an awesome group to work with. We have pulled it off, I think. So I want to say to all of you, thank you for taking the time out of your lives to attend today. If you haven't already done so, please fill out your registration card, and don't be surprised if you hear from us. Also, be sure to pick up literature in the back from the sponsors table. The report on the status of women for Pasadena will be handed to you as you exit today through that door. Denim Day is the next big collaborative event. What day is that? April 29th. April 29th, Denim Day. Wear your denim. Honor the gal who, okay. And with that, I will say to you, thank you so much. It was an honor to be part of this, and let's do it again.